Hi, Rad Mom here. Welcome back to the garden, where today we're going to be doing something just a little bit different. Usually what I try and do is sugarcoat my philosophical ramblings in the form of a response video. But this week I decided to just go for it. This week we're just going to do straightforward feminist philosophy here on the Rad Mom channel. And y'all let me know what you think. The truth presented by radical feminism is almost too horrifying to face directly. We get lost in the horror. It happened to me too. I made it out the other side, for the most part. I still, to this day, stumble upon fun little disgusting nuggets of self-hatred tucked away in my own thoughts. Vigilance against it is a lifelong project. But it's like an inverted version of the romance myth, where the wedding is the ending and they live happily ever after. Girl meets feminism and lives happily never after. But what does the rest of that story actually look like? What if I told you that it's also like an inverted version of the romance myth? We visit quite a lot here on the Rad Mom channel with the misrepresentations of radical feminism from academics, from journalists, and TikTokers alike. It is an oft-abused term that I have taken it upon myself to defend. Why? Why would I do that? Everybody hates radical feminists. Well, first of all, I want to say that not every wacko who calls themselves a feminist is a radical feminist. But why do I call myself that? How can a woman with a husband and children consider myself to be a radical feminist? I mentioned last week several points of disagreement. I have several rad fem heresies because while I do love the theory, I disagree with a lot of how it's often put into practice. Radical feminism believes that women's oppression is systemic. It is produced by how society functions. They also criticize motherhood, marriage, the nuclear family, and sexuality, questioning how much culture is based on patriarchal assumptions. But in my experience, in practice, it's more like we think all culture surrounding such things is entirely made of patriarchal assumptions. And personally, I'm not ready to admit that men created us. How little we must think of women throughout history if we so easily accept that they put nothing of themselves into their daily lives, that it was all handmaiding all the time, every girl a pick-me girl. But not us modern girls, we know better. We got rid of all that stuffy, girly shit. That's right, I think our internalized misogyny might have us not like other girlsing ourselves right out of everything women's history and women's culture might teach us. This makes heresy number one. I am trying to actually unpack some of the baggage we brought with us from the kitchen, rather than just pretending it doesn't exist. We want to trash it, but we can't, because the biological foundation the oppression of women was based on, sexual dimorphism, stubbornly persists. We are women, and we should be actively engaged in the understanding of what that means. Women's nature does exist. Throwing away every ideal we have regarding that is no more critically minded than unquestioning acceptance. As feminists, we work to identify with our female selves, then carry this notion that shouldn't affect us in our thoughts or in our behavior. Which strikes me, again, as if we are trying to remove ourselves from the equation, as if we add nothing of value. To me, the differences between men and women are the foundations of our oppression, but nature didn't make it that way. Patriarchy did. Patriarchy is what convinced us these differences make us inferior, and that is what I refuse to accept. Those differences are what make us women, and I see the role of feminism as the process of us unpacking this and redefining these differences on our own terms. Which brings me to heresy number two. As we absorb radical feminist ideas, we start to feel uncomfortable. Especially as a woman, the thought of having been complicit in so much toxic bullshit is very jarring for many of us. And we tend to have one of two reactions. We reject what scares us, or we get really, really angry. The rage that's triggered by coming to see that misogyny is so pervasive that it's inside our own minds needs to be untangled. This is a long and difficult process, one that I found myself going through unconsciously, and I don't think I'm alone in that. Generations of women before us have grappled with this. Some of them have worked through this process with the help of the written word. Books published as works of philosophy, which I believe are, in fact, praxis. Radical feminist ideas put people off because they cause women to spew forth this bile that we had been keeping to ourselves, that we had been suppressing. But this is just the first step in getting to the root of things, the necessary destruction of the old understanding to make way for the new. It is a vital first step. But I've come to believe that this sort of thing belongs in private. It is so personal, so painful, and often irrational in the way therapy sessions are because that's what it is. In last week's video, we saw a couple good examples of this.
Once the class men disappears, women as a class will disappear as well, for there are no slaves without masters.
If we are not slaves, we are not women? Is the sort of self-hating, irrational statement of someone exploring their false beliefs to perhaps examine and discard them. This is not a rational theoretical statement, even if the author herself regarded it as such. I only recently peeked above this horizon too. As experience demanded, I reconcile why these works are both important and seriously flawed philosophy. I don't think that's what they are, for the most part. I'm starting to think the best thing radical feminists could do for ourselves, for our cause, is to clarify the distinction between theory and practice, between the principles of radical feminism and what we think about them. Which sort of leads me to heresy number 3, which is that misandry is not feminism. You may have heard me say this before if you've been on the channel for a little while. Rage to the point of burning hatred for all things patriarchal is part of expelling the poison. But it is praxis, not theory. It is something we all have to deal with in our own way. But collectively, we have to ask ourselves, do we want a better future for our daughters? Or no daughters at all? Otherwise, I really do agree with pretty much all of radical feminism. Prostitution? I just cannot see how treating your body as just another commodity isn't a soul-crushing capitalist fever dream. Surrogacy and pornography? Similarly. Plastic surgery, too. I saw some criticisms of radical feminism that said us being against these contradicts the "my body, my choice" motto, which to me just shows that to be an oversimplification of things. Because slogans are fun, but they're not really philosophy either. But generally speaking, I actually have very little personal experience with any of these things. So I do tend to focus a whole lot on the trans issue because I have, unfortunately, quite a bit of personal experience in that area. And I do feel that it is probably the most urgent threat to feminism at the moment and women as a whole. And before we wrap up, as a special treat for those of you who stayed to the end, I'm going to show you just what inspired me to go ahead and go for this week. I was scripting this video anyway, and then I saw Adam Conover's latest video was an interview with ContraPoints, and I thought, Adam Conover does a lot of fact-checking and critical thinking stuff, and naively I assumed that someone was finally going to be critical of ContraPoints.
I am so excited for today's episode. We have on the show today a guest I have wanted to have on the show for years, and frankly, one of the people I most admire working on the internet or really in all of media today.
So the critical lens is out the window then.
What is so impressive about Natalie's work is that she doesn't just repackage other people's thoughts like so many people do on YouTube. No, she delivers original philosophical insight and analysis that is genuinely new.
How?
But rather than deliver that in a lecture room or a book, she puts them into video essays on YouTube that are watched massively.
The only difference between me and ContraPoints so far is that I don't have a massive audience.
Her work has won her nearly 1.8 million YouTube followers, and she has also won a Peabody Award.
But apparently there's a market for this. Y'all want me to just sit down and give my ideas to the camera? Mwah. You're welcome.
Her work is genuinely a new form of media, serious philosophical work watched by millions on the biggest platform imaginable.
Excuse you, a genuinely new form of media? Does this guy even YouTube? The thing that sticks out the most to me about ContraPoint's work is how it is all in service of the idea that he is a woman because he says so.
What do I call you? Internet public intellectuals? What do you call yourself?
I guess I worry that public intellectuals sets me up for failure, but I call myself a YouTuber because, why get more complicated than it needs to be?
Because that'd be honest. But so what exactly are the qualifications for this whole not a public intellectual bit?
I feel like we have something in common in that I've said many times on this show, I intended to go to grad school for philosophy. I never did. And it's been a thorn in my side ever since. I have a shameful bachelor's. You went for a number of years and left, and now both here we are on YouTube.
Okay, so a college dropout? Shit, I got better than that. I have an associate's degree in audio technology. I saw this and it made me so mad. On behalf of me and every other person on YouTube who attempts to do their own philosophy on anything. Apparently there's a market for this shit. All right, y'all want to throw down? I can throw down. And you just watched it. So thank you so much for joining me out here in the garden for our very first straightforward video essay here on the Radmon channel. Please let me know what you thought down in the comments. Loved it, hate it, I don't care. All feedback is welcome. And come back at the top of the hour for the live stream where you can kick me around some more. And here next week for a brand new video. And I will see y'all next time. Okay, thanks. Bye.